The U.S. Agency for International Development supports American foreign policy by delivering support to areas of the globe most in need. Recently, a new position of Chief Diversity Officer was created with the goal of improving diversity, equity, and inclusion both within the agency and externally. Neneh Diallo is the newly appointed Chief Diversity Officer for USAID. Neneh, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Mimi. It's great to be here.
USAID's Administrator Samantha Power said this, quote, "Too often, the burden of making a workplace more equitable, more respectful, more welcoming, and inclusive falls on underrepresented and under-resourced and under-supported diverse staff." Neneh, has it been your experience that this issue usually falls to the underrepresented?
Thank you so much for that question. First off, I'll say that USAID Administrator Samantha Power has prioritized diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility since her first day in the office, when she signed and approved USAID's DEIA strategic plan. Since that day, Administrator Power has continued emphasizing the importance of increasing diversity, ensuring equity, improving inclusion, and expanding accessibility. Integrating DEIA across our workforce and operations will not just help us better engage with and empower our diverse communities within the world that we serve, but also help us achieve our critical mission. And we recognize the important role that the leadership plays in holding the agency and our staff and implementing partners accountable to our commitments in this space. And so that's part of the reason why I'm so proud of all the work that USAID has accomplished to date, and it reflects the commitment of leaders across the entire agency and at every level.
So what's different now, though, about USAID's approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So one of the things that we're doing right now is really taking a strategic approach and really looking at the data that we have. We're currently undergoing a barrier analysis to figure out where are we deficient in our diversity efforts. What does our diversity look like here at USAID, and where are the gaps that we need to fill? And so right now, our approach to diversity and inclusion is one that has a real focus on equity and accessibility. And the inclusion of these two key paradigms within our DEIA program speaks to an agenda that works to ensure that there's equal access and opportunity, and being intentional with our efforts. And so this includes the data, as I mentioned, to make informed decisions, and allows us to look objectively at the true state of DEIA and identify areas where we have gaps.
So talk about hiring and retention specifically. What are you planning to do differently?
So as the United States leading international development arm, USAID leads international development and humanitarian efforts to save lives, reduce poverty, and strengthen democratic governance. And to do that effectively, we want to make sure that we reflect the rich diversity and the people and talent that the United States has to offer. So we know that there are a variety of complexities associated with federal government employment. And our goal and approach is one that acknowledges such and works to alleviate barriers and processes to aspiring public servants in America. So we're looking at being more intentional with our hiring with underserved populations, including individuals with disabilities and disabled veterans. And we know that these populations have been historically underrepresented in federal employment, and we want to change that.
Is this just about changing what USAID looks like, or is it something deeper?
Oh, no. I mean, our DEIA efforts are to look at not just our employment and, who and what we look like, but also what we do. And so that speaks to our programming. And so you'll hear the administrator in her November speech talk about inclusive development. And that's really looking at our programming and being very targeted with, let's make sure that the work that we're doing is actually reaching the people that we intend to reach. So whether that's, working with local organizations where they will be the ones who are actually the stakeholders, reaching out to the communities where we work and talking to the stakeholders and our beneficiaries. And so making sure that the funds that we are allocating there is really targeting and being inclusive of those groups.
Critics will say that there's too much focus on race and gender, and it should just be about competence. How do you respond to that?
While I can respect their views, I will also say that, we've had systems in place that have held people back for way too long, underrepresented groups. And the tide has changed, and now it's time to make sure that we are inclusive of all those groups. People have their lived experiences that they bring to the table, and diversity is not just diversity of across race, gender, and sexual identity, but also diversity of thought. So you can have a boardroom that's full of diverse people in terms of their race and gender, but if they were all educated within the same institution, then that's not really diversity. And so what we're trying to do in our approach is ensure that we are bringing everybody's lived experiences to the table so that we can really approach our development programming in a better way, more inclusive.
And Neneh, briefly as we close up, I wonder about your personal background and how it informs your work as a Chief Diversity Officer coming from a family of African immigrants.
Thank you for that question. Being born and raised in New York City, I'm already living, I grew up in a very cosmopolitan, very international background. I attended the United Nations International School in New York, and that experience really was a huge milestone that I will never forget and really has shaped who I am. So for me, with best friends who, ranged from Italian, Ukrainian, Filipina, to Jamaican and African American, I can really say that I truly embody what inclusion means, and it's seen through my friendships and my personal relationships that I have, and I bring that my authentic self to work. I believe that everybody deserves a seat at the table, regardless of their racial and ethnic background or gender.
Well, Neneh, thank you so much. We're out of time, but thank you for being on the program and for your efforts there at USAID.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mimi. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.